Hello, everyone, and welcome in. This is Aaron St. Dennis, FF Mad Scientist, and welcome to Rat Pack Fantasy Football. And for those of you who tuned in yesterday, you may have noticed that for the first time ever, we have the same intro 2 days in a row because we didn't get a copyright notice last night from YouTube. So we're just going to leave that one until mine's professionally made from a friend. But today we are here with the NFL Week 2 NFC home game preview, starting with the NFC this week because the Thursday nighter is Vikings at Eagles. So that's where we start. Joining me today is Jesse. Jesse, how's it going, man?
It's going well. Finally wrapping up the end of week 1, getting ready for week 2, and you're going to take this off and see where we go.
I find since I started doing this more seriously, I'm in week 2 mode by kickoff of week 1. Week 1 hit and it becomes no more prep for it. It's not even that. By Thursday, before kickoff tomorrow, I will be completely done with week 1 already. And then at some point I'll have to go back. I think I went back like Monday or Tuesday, and I've got a few data analysis things where I have to enter it. But once kickoff of Thursday night starts, I'm officially on to the next week. And this week no longer matters. Everyone said, I got people in group chats and friend groups and work, and they're all blowing it up talking about. I did not check one score of any of my leagues the entire weekend until it was done. I waited till I'm lucky, actually. I didn't realize it seemed like Sleeper ran their waivers in some of my leagues at midnight Eastern last night. I was expecting it to be more like 3 a.m., which is what it normally was. I barely got some of my waiver claims in. So,
I like you get to a certain point, a certain amount of leagues, like you have to be prepared. Otherwise, it's just you just get buried, and like you get caught up in work. Like I know I've missed one before, where I'm like, oh wait, that was waivers. I'm like, crap. So yeah, I've been more on top of it this year, where I'm actually being involved as opposed to previous years, which sucks when that happens.
It's never taken me so long to do a waiver run as it did last night, even just on Sleeper, Sleeper I find is by far the easiest. It was pretty good.
Yes.
I had 2 family and friend leagues still on Yahoo that I ran through. MFL was a nightmare, and I had to get in front of that. After my MFL issue last week, I told you where I ended up winning the league somehow in a vampire league, so the night right before Thursday night football happened, I realized my starting tight end was Kelsey. So I said, you know what, that's all right. I'll do what most leagues do. I'll put him on the bench and I'll add someone tonight on waivers. Nope, on MFL, you have to have a legal lineup at all times once you hit submit. And I had already submitted it in case I didn't get home from work. So I got stuck with Travis Kelce in my lineup because I hadn't picked up a tight end yet. So somehow I managed to pull out a pretty convincing win anyways, but I was not pleased. So the first thing I did this week was went and added a tight end just in case Kelsey's out again, which I expect him to be.
Yeah, I actually had Kelsey sitting in one lineup as well, a similar thing. But it was Sleeper. I just missed it where like I had him and I was going to take him out, and then I just blanked, got distracted. And then I check it like 5 minutes after kickoff, and I was like, fuck. So thankfully, tight end sucks so bad it didn't really matter. It didn't matter to us, but
you left like 2 points over your competition.
Yeah, exactly. So it was about as good as it could have been.
I was looking at that earlier with some of my data analysis, and I said, "Holy shit, did tight end suck?" But that's the other one that I had on Sleeper. This didn't happen to me recently, but I've had where you put in a waiver claim. Your quarterback. You think your quarterback's going to be out, so you put in a waiver claim for a quarterback. And it goes the next day you wake up and somebody else got the quarterback, and then you go to add someone and it's like, oh, this league runs daily waivers. I hate leagues that do that. Once Sunday gets here, it should be open free agency. So I had that happen last year where I had a guy, I forget, someone went down to injury. I tried to replace him Saturday night. Sunday morning, someone outbid me. And by the time I got my quarterback, I think I got lucky, and I think Jimmy G was available on Monday Night Football, so I scored him. But I hate leagues that don't do that stupid rule.
Any league where it's like the games are playing that day, it should be open. Like I don't want to have the set time where people miss it and then they can't add a player. It's so frustrating. Just leave it open on the day of games. Otherwise, I don't care. But like when there's games actually playing, just leave it open. It's so much easier.
Alrighty, I guess we can get right into it then. Our first game, we have the graphic up for the Vikings. They are in Philadelphia. Philadelphia is a 7-point favorite, 48.5 over under here. I guess we can start with the Vikings. They look pretty solid on offense, despite Kirk Cousins throwing, was it 3 picks, 4 picks? I don't remember. It was like
a lot, too many.
344 yards. I have them ranked here by fantasy output for week 1. So Cousins would have been the highest scoring player on the team had it not been for those 3 interceptions. With 344 yards passing, you'd think you could, break the 30-point mark, but not when you throw that many picks. Just ask Josh Allen. Kirk Cousins, I'm looking here. God damn it. Right when I say I'm looking here, I got an update on my second screen over here, right as I was about to quote something. This is like, I've got my matchup guide, and I quote that was, I believe, published today. They published it a day early. And I quoted specifically, take it with a grain of salt this early in the season. Like, I have Kirk Cousins right now, according to week 1 results, as the second easiest matchup for quarterbacks. The Eagles. That's not going to hold. So, this was kind of the difficulty for my sit start and my matchup chart. Sure, theoretically, the Eagles looked terrible last week. They gave up more points to the quarterback than anyone except for the Chargers. I don't expect that to hold. Kirk Cousins is still probably a low-end QB1, high-end 2 for me, but it's not the juicy matchup it was last week for Mac Jones. Go figure.
Right.
What are your thoughts here on Cousins? Low end QB1 this week?
Yeah, if I have Cousins, I'm starting him confidence. It's interesting because that game was weird, the Philadelphia game. It was not a high scoring affair, but Mac Jones just put up a ton of points. So it was not how you would expect that to go. I'd expect the Eagles to just barnstorm the Vikings on offense. So they are going to have to keep up because the Eagles will probably put up at least 30 points. Put up 400 plus yards offense, and if the Vikings get behind early, it's going to just be chucking it. So I would love Jefferson, Cousins, Addison, all those guys, and even Hawkinson. Those guys, I'm all aboard this week. And so yeah, I'm riding with Cousins. He'd probably be QB. I haven't officially done my rankings, but I'm got him at QB 8. I'm in that range, if top of my head when I break it down. But yeah,
I don't have my rankings up either. So,
but it's just top of my head, yeah, a mid to lower end QB1 sounds about right to me.
Yeah, we've got the receivers. I think even in what's probably a tough matchup. Let me scroll down here on my sheet. Actually, we'll go to running backs next because that's the next on my list. Madison. I have him as the 10th easiest, so not it's not one of those matchups where it really sways it either way. Again, I'm not really in on Madison. Never have been. He was very inefficient. Was saved by a touchdown last week. Despite the fact that this, according to the numbers, is a good matchup against the Eagles, I think the Eagles rebound and that number starts to come down. Playing Madison this week as anything higher than a flex. Yeah,
he'll be a lower end QB2 flex range. Yeah, if you have him, you're probably gonna roll him out there just because unless you're stacked a running back, the RB3 position, he seems like a solid guy to just plug in and play and hope he falls in the end zone.
I'm scrolling through the matchup charts here, and I never realized just how bad the Eagles were last week. They are also the 9th best matchup for wide receivers. So pretty much they sucked against everything across the board against New England. Who would have seen that coming? But I don't think there's much to see there. If you have Jefferson, you're starting him. If you have Jordan Addison, you're probably starting Jordan Addison too as a wide receiver 3 or a flex. I was really impressed with how good Addison looked. I mean, he only 16 points, not bad for a debut, but he was a lot better than I expected. Earlier than I expected. What are your thoughts there? Obviously, Jefferson's a no-doubter, but what are your thoughts on Addison?
He looked great. That's what we all thought coming in. He's pro-ready. He's going to step into one of the best passing roles in the offense. He comes in, he steps in that Thielen role, who Thielen was terrible last year. So you're upgrading that position. He's going to get over 100 targets. This is why I was lower on Hawkinson, because Addison is who we thought he was, and he lived up to it. You saw a few of the highlights. He was just wide open for that touchdown play. That was perfect. So yeah, he is an ideal just kind of flex play for me moving forward. And he could, if it continues, he could be a wide receiver too throughout the season, just because that defense they have is terrible. They're going to be a lot of shootouts, and he has one of the better quarterbacks and supporting fantasy options. So I'm all above Jordan Addison.
Yeah, and then to transition, it gets even better. In theory, that the Eagles are the number one matchup for tight ends, but I think Hawkinson was tight end 3 on the week. You're starting him. There's no doubt there. That's a pretty easy one. DST, if I have the Vikings, I'm sitting them. How about you?
Yeah, I would not want to touch them this week. There's no way. It would have to be desperation for me to even think about playing them. I hate that matchup. They're going to get destroyed.
Yeah, I am also sitting Greg Joseph, the kicker. Not sure if you're a big kicker guy, but this is the third worst matchup. They just typically aren't. They don't give up many points to kickers. So I am also sitting Greg Joseph in addition to the Vikings DST. One sit, one start from this team before we move on to the Eagles.
So of the higher end options, I'm going to sit Madison of these guys. And I'm going to start Addison. Like, I trust Addison in this matchup. I'm going to sit Madison.
That totally tripped me out. I'm like, did he say he's going to sit Madison and start Madison? Nope, you're the same as me. You're going to sit Madison and start Addison. Okay. That's exactly how I feel. I agree.
Just a little word trip. Yeah.
We'll move on here to the other side of the ball with, get the damn thing out. The Eagles, Jalen Hurts, it's top 12 matchup against the Vikings. That I think is actually, if I told you the Eagles were the second best matchup and the Vikings were the 11th best matchup, I believe the Eagles defense is better than the Vikings. Currently they are ranked much lower, but I think this Vikings pass defense sucks. But you're not benching Jalen Hurts anyways, so you should bounce back. And I think they're going to take out last week on the Vikings defense, so I pity them. We can just move on. There's not a whole lot to say there. Running back is scary. So Rashad Penny was a healthy scratch. DeAndre Swift sucked. Kenny Gainwell is the waiver wire darling. It looks, as of the last report about 20 minutes ago, like he is not going to be ready to play Thursday night. So all that fab you spent on Kenny Gainwell this week is probably going to be useless this week. And we're going to have DeAndre Swift and Rashad Penny in what looks to be a pretty crappy run matchup. Are you starting? Okay, Gainwell. If Gainwell plays, where do you see him? And if he doesn't, what do you got with the other two?
So if Gainwell plays, I'm gonna treat him as a lower end RB2. If he's out, I'm just gonna pivot to Boston Scott. Like they freaking didn't even play Penny last week. I don't want to trust Penny. I don't know what's going on with Giants. Yeah. So, but the thing is, like, this offense is going to be one of the higher matchups in the week. I think it's a 48.5, almost 49 point over under. So there's going to be a lot of points, and I'm going to target the running back in this offense, and that's going to be Boston Scott. Like, I know, like, I'll play Swift. I don't mind playing Swift, and he'll probably burn me again, whatever. But if you picked up Gainwell and he's out, just go pick up Scott, and then you could just plug in Scott as a flex play. Like, I would be fine with that. I know we think it's only the Giants, but he'll probably find his way in the end zone in this matchup. So yeah, I'm fine plugging in Scott.
The receivers are pretty easy. This is a juicy matchup. The secondary sucks. I think Smith and A.J. Brown are both wide receiver 1 options, and I think it's likely one of them finishes as the top 3 to 5 here. I prefer Devonta Smith, but I'm not an A.J. Brown guy. I assume there's no argument there. They're just set him and forget him this week.
Yeah, both are top 10 guys this week. Just play them both. Like, just throw them in. Don't even think about it.
Dallas Goedert, after completely disappearing last week, I think you see. I think that stupid thing on my screen again, don't I?
Oh, he's the blanked out 0.
Yeah, no, he's the. Yeah, I don't know why that's up there again. I don't know why they do this. How the hell do I? That's not what I wanted.
It's all right. He was so bad we don't even get to show his name. That's how bad he was.
No, there we go. I couldn't figure out how to get that stupid thing off my screen. It comes up all the time. I got a new computer, and it's this new whatever it does for the viewer I'm using. It does this to make it easier to transition between them, but it annoys the shit out of me because I keep forgetting to close it. But Goddard completely disappeared last week, but that could be the Bill Belichick tight end effect. This week he gets a pretty rough matchup. The Vikings have been good against tight ends. But I think if you got Goddard, you got to start him anyways.
Yeah, if you have him, you're playing him. I mean, who are you going to stream over Goddard? Like, that's the thing. He's too good of a talent, and they specifically talked about it. That was the one thing Sirianni focused on. He was like, hey, we got to get Goddard more involved this week, so they're going to at least feature him. So, yeah, I'm going to play Goddard.
Yeah, you're going to play him. He's a low-end tight end one, despite the fact that nobody wants to give him credit for that.
No.
Every year he gets drafted as tight end 6 or 7. Best finish ever is tight end 10. Nobody seems to listen to me, but that's all right. I'll just keep passing on Dallas Goedert and take someone more upside. The highest scoring Eagle last week was Jake Elliott, who gets a pretty good matchup this week against the Vikings. So if you do start kickers, he's a good start. The Eagles DST, if you got him, you probably got to start him because you probably had to draft a kicker or defense early. This is not the greatest of matchups, but what are your thoughts here? Do you play either, or do you play the DST here if you got the Eagles? You freeze on me, Jesse? Oh, great timing, Jesse. He's out. My internet just went out. Give me a minute. All right. Well, like I said, they are not a great matchup. Oh, are we getting Jesse back?
We're back, baby. I don't know. It's will happen every time.
I sent it to you, and then I clicked over to try and load up the next graphic, and I had the screen closed, and I was like, wow, he's really taking a second to think this one through, hey? And then I look back, and all I see is, and I'm like, he's fine. So what are your thoughts on the Eagles DST there, if you play DSTs?
So I'm a little worried about them this week just because that Vikings offense is good and I expect a lot of points in this game. So the way I see the Eagles like being productive in this matchup is forcing turnovers and sacks. Like that's the way I see them being a top defense this week. So I expect them to shut down Madison, but like overall, I'm not super high on the Eagles defense this week for fantasy.
No, I would agree. But like I said, you probably had to use a decent pick to get them, and you probably can't drop them because they're the Eagles defense. They're one of the 3 Cowboys, Eagles, Niners I have as kind of the holy trinity there of DSTs. Can't drop them, so stream them and just hope it's not too painful. Hope for a Kirk Cousins turnover or 3 again. Next matchup we got is Bears at Buccaneers. Bucks picked by 3 here. 41.5 over under. We'll start with Justin Fields, who looked terrible last week. Again, it's a top 10 matchup against the Bucks. They gave up 16.6 last week. You can't sit Fields, probably.
Nope.
Like the Bucks defense, the run defense, I think is better than the pass defense, but either way, you got to sit Fields. I don't expect this one to be a shootout. It's probably lower scoring, but you got to hope his rushing bails you out. But this is the problem. If you drafted Fields as one of the first 5 QBs, you're going to have to deal with this all season where these guys aren't going to – it's not going to be the Kirk Cousins savior where it's a shootout every week. These guys are going to play low-scoring games. You're going to need a touchdown and some rushing yards. I assume you got to start Fields this week?
Yeah, you have to. He's too good of a talent for fantasy. Like that rushing, just the rushing floor he has, you play him every week. If you have him and you bench him, why do you even have him on your roster? So you got to try him back out there. I'm not that worried about the Buccaneers defense, honestly, for fantasy points. Like I get it.
No, the running back room is interesting. I know a lot of the talk was that Roshan just got all the work in garbage time, as Jesse froze again. I'm not 100% sure of exactly, how much truth there is to the rumors that he was just the 4th down garbage time guy. And even if that is true, they're going to spend a lot of time in 4th down garbage time. So
that's the thing.
I think I like Roshan here. It is a middle of the pack matchup. The last few years, the Bucs have been better on defense, but after losing Sue and they've had some injuries, they haven't been as good. I think if I've got to start a Bears running back, I go Roshan, Herbert, Deonta Foreman. What are your thoughts on this trio here?
Yeah, there was a reason Roshan was my number 1 running back to pick up for the rest of the season is because I expect him to take it over. It might not happen this week, but like with that offense, he's going to slowly gain more and more confidence and playing time. So like by week 5, I expect him to be the guy in that offense. But yeah, their offense isn't the best and their defense isn't great. So that's the premium situation where Roshan's going to be on the field a lot in 3rd down and garbage time. So Roshan's the guy I want rest of the season and this week too. You
know whose leagues you're not getting Roshan Johnson on waivers in?
Yours.
because I've been standing on top of a building with a megaphone yelling Roshan Johnson for 6 fucking months, and I own him everywhere. I looked. Everyone said, "Oh, my cousin was talking to me about some of his waiver claims," and I sent him my top few at each position, and he said, "Hey, don't you like Roshan?" And I said, "Oh shit, I forgot to include him. I gave you my list." And he's like, "Well, why wouldn't you include him on your list?" I said, "Because he's not available in a single league I'm in. I guarantee it. Because if he was, he's already on my roster." Oh, really? That's Same with him and Kenny Gainwell. Kenny Gainwell is not available on even my shortest league because Kenny Gainwell and Roshan Johnson are already on my bench. So
right, exactly.
I'm starting.
You're a prophet with this.
I don't know if they're going to get nearly as much garbage time because I don't think Tampa, is that great of an offense. But I still think Roshan takes over, so I'm starting Roshan as probably a flex.
Yeah, it depends on who my other running backs I have because if I went with like a 0 RB build, I'm just gonna put Roshan on because those are the running backs I don't trust anyways. So I'll just play Roshan. But if I have a solid RB core, I'm just gonna keep Roshan on the bench.
He was like RB10 last week. I think it was 9, 10, or 11. I don't remember. All I know is I did my top 12 graphics and I posted them on Twitter earlier, and I remember he made the top 12 running backs list. So I'm not sure where he fell. I don't remember off the top of my head, but he is a top 12. Moving on to the wide receiver. Wide receiver. DJ Moore. It's a top 3 matchup in theory because they're typically good against the run. DJ Moore looked pissed off, wasn't targeted very often. Fields was inaccurate when he did target him. Another guy I've been pretty high on during the process that I have a few shares of, Tyler Scott was pretty good. Darnell Mooney was pretty good. I think all those people who loaded up on DJ Moore as the next version of Stephon Diggs or A.J. Brown are going to be disappointed because I think this is a low-volume passing game, and I think when they do pass, they may spread it around to Mooney and Scott and Kmet more than you think. If you drafted DJ Moore, you likely have to play him this week, but I would like to sit DJ Moore even in a technically a prime matchup here, but he's probably a flex for me. DJ Moore scares me. He was one of the ones after week 1 that I'm most afraid of. What are your thoughts on the wide receiver room here in general?
Yeah, it's not looking good for DJ Moore. They threw 37 times last week, and he saw 2 targets. So I don't know what's happening in that offense. But he is the best. He's the best
wheel because he was very vocal about not being happy about the 2 targets. So
I mean, if I'm him, I'd be pissed too. I'd be like, listen, who are you throwing to on this team that's better than me? So I expect them to heavily target DJ Moore in this matchup, but you can't start him with confidence. It's just been a disaster in last year and this year. So I'll probably play him if I have him on my roster, but I don't have him on any rosters. DJ Moore was not a guy I was actively targeting. So if you drafted him, just play him. This matchup, you're going to need to he'll see at least way more targets. So of the other guys, I don't want to touch Bears wide receiver outside DJ Moore. It's just it's such boom bust. You don't know who's going to hit if anyone hits. And this includes the tight ends who will hit in a second. I just do not want the passing game options on this offense. So if it's best ball, cool. But Mooney, I don't want to play. I don't feel great about DJ Moore. So Tyler Scott, no thank you. Chase Claypool, just drop his ass. You don't even want to roster that guy. So
earlier they're not releasing him. Are they making I think they said they're making him game day inactive this week.
That would not surprise me. Did you see the game day tape? It was a disaster. The effort he put forth was just brutal. I can see why they're we regret that trade very much. And I'm yeah, I would regret that trade too because Chase Claypool is just too immature. He's got to figure it out himself before you can play him.
And Roshan was RB8 last week. I found my little chart here, my leader.
I like it. Yeah, I love how we had that My Guys episode. We were both talking about Roshan. I'm yeah, he's a stud. I'm looking forward to seeing him the rest of the year.
Cole Kmet at tight end here is oops, my wrong chart is he is the second best matchup for a tight end. He's probably someone I'm starting as a low end tight end 1. I get it, he's risky. He was all right this week. I have to bring up my tight end chart. Oh, he was outside the top 12, which surprised me because maybe it was just one league I had funky scoring in. He must have done something because I thought I seen him as tight end 7. Oh, you know what it was? Maybe he got passed by the late games. Maybe I looked at 1 o'clock. So he didn't have a great week. He had less than 8 points, but I don't mind Kmet. I don't like him. He's not someone I'm choosing to start. But
yeah,
if you're, did we see? You want to hear the top 12 for tight ends? I think we did this on the last show.
Yeah, we did. It's
Hunter
so
Henry,
ugly.
Hayden Hurst, T.J. Hawkinson, Parham. Like, if I went all the way down, there's like 3 guys you've heard of here. So
Yeah, it's rough.
So.
It's rough. If it's gonna be like that every week, outside of like Kelsey and Andrews, you're just gonna see random dudes come in and random guys fall out. So yeah, like with Komet, I just don't think he's that good, and that offense is not great. So that's kind of, I mean, I'll play him if I have him, but like once again, you can't have confidence in starting Cole Komet.
That is exactly how I would have summed it up. If I have him, I will play him. So we have next up the kicker. We'll go through it quickly. Obviously, Cairo Santos. Bad matchup here against Tampa. Low-scoring game. He's probably a sit. I don't think many of you drafted him. The Bears DST. Where do the Bucks rank? The Bucks rank as a crappy matchup because they got into a shootout last week. So, excuse me. I don't think anybody is rostering or starting the Bears DST, so you can probably just skip them for the week. Thoughts here on the Bears DST? Any disagreement with sitting their asses?
No, I would not want to touch them. Like, they need to show it to me for multiple weeks before I have any confidence in starting the Bears defense.
Fair enough. We'll move on here to the other side of the ball. We've got the Bucks. Baker Mayfield was not as bad as I thought. This week, the Bears rank as the 3rd best matchup, and unlike some of the other tainted values we have from chaotic week 1, I think that the Bears defense, pass defense anyways, may actually suck. I'm not a huge fan of Baker. I like him as a character guy, lowering his shoulder there to get that 4th down to win the game, and then shit-talking that guy to go back and gain some weight. That's epic. I love that in my quarterback. His talent's just not there, but he's someone, if I'm in a super flex league, I'll start him if I have to. I don't think he's terrible. He's not a high end. He's probably low teens, high. Well, he's more like 20 to 24 for me. Probably. I don't have my exact rankings out, but I'll start him. I think the 20 he put up last week is pretty much what he will do in a good week. So you playing Baker if you have to in a super flex?
Yeah, in super flex league, I'll play Baker this week. The Bears defense is just like not good against the pass. So like I'm targeting him and the wide receivers this week. I expect them to be good. So we'll get into the running back and how just awful that situation is. But
that's who we're gonna get here first. We got Rashad White. Who I thought was going to be great because Baker loves to check down and Rashad White is the guy. I think he may lose this job to Sean Tucker, who also isn't great, but he may lose this job to Sean Tucker very soon. Rashad White was terrible. He gets the 3rd easiest matchup this week with the Bears. I don't know if you can play him. I think we said this too on the recap show. It was something like the 4th most inefficient running back game in the last 12 years. This is scary. If I have Rashad White in a dynasty league or in any league I'm trying to sell now, I think the floor is pretty low already, so I don't know if you're getting it back. But he went from a guy where I was consistent, but pretty confidently firing him up as an RB2. I don't know if I want to flex him this week. And I'd probably like to I was going to say I'd like to handcuff Sean Tucker and try and stash him, but I don't even know if Tucker looked any better. I think this Bucks backfield is in a void for me. How about you?
Yeah, that line isn't great on top of it. So you have an inefficient – Rashad White was like him and Leonard Fournette last year were awful as far as efficiency goes. And no surprise that carried over once again because the line's not good and Rashad White just like folks, like he's just not that great. So it's a volume situation where if the volume falls, it's kind of like Najee, same thing. The volume goes, there goes his value. So if you have Rashad White, you can play him this week and, see if it gets any better. But FYI, it could be a situation where this is the week where you're like, hey, guess what? I don't want any backfield. Like, I don't want either one of those guys. So, yeah, I'm not confident in Rashad White. I think I have him in 1 league, and I'm not starting him. I just don't want to deal with that. In redraft, it might be a little bit different. You might have to play him, and I get it. But, yeah, not a guy I'm actively targeting, even though it's a good matchup.
The receivers were better than I expected, but let's not get too carried away here. That was a shootout. The Vikings don't play defense. The Bears' defense sucks, but their pass defense is a little better than the Vikings. Evans, Godwin, I'm pretty confident in starting as a wide receiver too. Palmer, I don't mind flexing if I have to, but let's not get carried away. This offense is more of a floor offense than a ceiling. I mean, I'm sure Evans and Godwin will still have some games, but I'm not expecting what they did last week. What are you doing with the three of them?
If I have Evans and Godwin, I'm starting them. Like, I'm not even gonna overthink it. Like, the talent is there with those two, and I know we like hate on Baker and stuff like that, but if he can get them the ball, they'll be fine. So we saw that last week. It was a shootout. Once again, Chicago's defense sucks, so I'm confidently starting those two guys. So those guys are both just 2 wide receiver 2s for me this week, and we'll just ride them. I'm not going to overthink it. I'm going to put them in the lineup and play them. Like, that's how I'm just going to go with those 2.
We're running long here on some, so I'm going to skip quickly through some of the non-important players here. We had Cade Evans in a bad matchup. Not a great tight end. I'm going to sit him unless I'm desperate. And even then, you can probably get someone better off the waiver wire. We have Chase McLaughlin, the name I can't pronounce, their damn kicker. He had a good week. He's not a terrible start. He's not a great start. If you have him, I'm probably starting him. I think he's my kicker 11 this week. The Bucks DST, I think I have them pretty high this week. Let me look. I think I have them a top 6. I have them 4. So if you get the Bucks DST, I'm probably firing them up. So Otten sit, and then I'd start the kicker and I'd start the defense. Do you have any objections to that trio there?
That sounds good.
Yeah, like I said, the Bears were kind of a hodgepodge there last week of nobody knows what the hell was going on. So I think you got to start him and just pray that Fields. He does seem like he's a bit prone to, when he does finally throw the ball, to forcing it downfield a bit and turning it over. So I think that's your best bet. There's just to hope for some turnovers. 1 second, just keep trying to cue up my damn graphic. No, I got a new computer and it's not necessarily transitioning. It's transitioning 10 times faster. It's just not necessarily always doing what I expect it to do. And so I'm like, oh, okay, got to do this now. So we'll get to our next game, which is the Packers, favored by 2 at the Falcons, 40.5 over under here. We'll start with probably the surprise of the week. One of the surprises anyway. Jordan Love, how great he looked. This is not a great matchup according to last week anyways. The Falcons secondary looked better. Jordan Love, still not all in on him yet. I think he's a mid to low end QB2, but if I have him in Superflex, I'm going to start him. How about you?
Yeah, I'm starting him. Sorry, I have low blood sugar, so I'm eating something real quick. But like the matchup is, it is what it is. The interesting thing about Love is he was really inefficient even in his matchup. Like his off-target percentage was pretty bad. So keep that in mind. What you're looking for with Love is you hope if Watson comes back and this offense can count on those 3 guys, like Dubs, Watson, and Jones, and Musgrave, who I'm really high on, so we can get into that. But Jordan Love has the pieces. It's just up to him if his talent will translate. So it was a good week 1, good start. I think he did get a little bit lucky. So we'll see how week 2 goes for him. So I'm kind of cautiously optimistic, but I'm not actively going to start Jordan Love. But in like Superflex leagues, I'm playing him. Like I'll just go that route. In the traditional leagues, I'm going to keep him on the bench. We'll watch and see how that goes. And then if he goes off this week again, then, that's something I'm going to have a little more interest in with Jordan Love.
This is an interesting one for the running backs. It's probably going to be a slow-paced game. Aaron Jones was great last week. He's an easy start here if he plays.
That's the thing.
If he plays, A.J. Dillon is a total avoid. If Jones doesn't play, you might actually be able to flex A.J. Dillon. I know he hasn't looked good, but with no Aaron Jones, he might be startable. If Aaron Jones is out, how high do you think you can get A.J. Dillon here? Get him in as a flex?
Yeah, like I'm not high on Dillon. It's been a while since he's been a good running back in the league, so we'll see. If Jones is out, I'll play Dillon. But if Jones is playing, I'm just going to bench Dillon. Like that's just not a profile of a guy I'm chasing, right? Because you need touchdowns at that point. So if Jones is out, yeah, we'll ride with Dillon, but it's not super confident. And, you could do better. We'll just go through that. Like the Falcons defense isn't great, so that's kind of the thing where you're like, you know what? Maybe get a touchdown or 2.
Yeah, their pass defense isn't too bad, and the Packers' D is good. So this might be a slow, low-scoring game, which kind of scares me a bit for the receivers. Dobbs looked good. Who knows if Christian Watson's back, Jaden Reed's back. I think you've got some flex options here at best. Even if Christian Watson's healthy, I don't think I see him as any more than a flex this week because who knows how long he's healthy. And even Dobbs. Dobbs wasn't healthy during that game. So all three of these options in Dobbs, Reed, and Watson I can play this week. None of them I am particularly high on. How do you feel about him?
So of these guys, Watson's the guy I want, but realistically, we don't know how healthy he's going to be and how they're going to use him the first game back from an injury. So say if he's playing right, it's always you need to wait a week with injuries to see how the player is used. So like he could be healthy, but he might just see, 30% of snaps and just be useless for you. So I really don't want to play Watson. I'll play Dubs in this matchup just because I don't trust the Falcons defense. So I'll play Dubs. Reed is kind of just a guy I'm not going to play unless I'm desperate and need a guy. But he wasn't heavily used, so I was kind of hoping we'd see a little bit more from Reed in week 1. But he's a rookie. It's going to take him some time. So Dubs will be the guy of them. Until Watson's back and fully healthy, I'll play Dubs.
Luke Musgrave looks like a solid start. As scary as that is for a rookie, this is a pretty easy matchup. And he looked good in his NFL debut, so I'm probably starting him as low-end tight end 1. 8 points, I think that's his floor. I think he gets to that. It's even more so, I think, if Aaron Jones is out. So I'm definitely firing him up. I assume you are as well.
Yeah, there was a couple missed opportunities where he literally could have had 2 massive touchdown plays where he was overthrown on one play, which would have been like a 50-yard touchdown. And the other one, Love they still connected, but he was if it was on target, that's another touchdown. So Musgrave's usage is elite out of the gate, and I would not expect that to change. So Musgrave was a tight end I was targeting where I was talking to you. Prediction top 12 guy, that seems well within his range of outcomes. And this, they're going to depend on him. So yeah, if you have Musgrave, start him with confidence.
The kicker, we have Anders Carlson, not someone I'm high on, not a great matchup, but he's not a terrible desperation play because if memory serves me correctly, this one's in a dome. So you can't go wrong with a kicker in a dome. As far as the defense goes, it's after week 1, it's ranked as a low matchup. I think these numbers are skewed. I think the Packers defense is probably pretty good. And if I have the Packers defense, I'm probably going to stream them or play them. I think they're just outside the top 12 for me. Who's starting to sit for you in this game?
So I'm starting Musgrave.
For the Packers.
Oh, yeah. So I'll start Musgrave. The Jones situation is interesting. I'm obviously going to play him, but I'm going to bench Dylan. I'm not playing Dylan. So we'll see how that goes. It could change if Jones is out, then that changes, but I'll just bench Dylan.
That sounds about right to me. We'll move on to the Falcons here. Desmond Ridder, all that, hype about him taking a step forward did not pan out. He looked terrible, and it looks like this team is just going to completely run the ball. They're a middle-of-the-pack matchup here this week against a pretty good Packers secondary. I think Ridder is a sit. I don't know about you. I'd rather play Baker over Ridder this week.
Yeah, it's kind of what we know about Ridder is he was really bad last year. He wasn't much better than Mariota, which is saying something because Mariota was trash. So you can give him another shot if you want, but I'm not going to play Ridder in this matchup. It could be just an awful where he puts up 5 points a game. That's just not a guy I want to play. So only in where I'm desperate in Superflex leagues where I need him as my QB2, sure, I'll play him. But outside of that, Ridder, we're not touching Ridder in this matchup.
We go from an easy sit to an easy start. We have Bijan, who this is a top 4 rushing matchup. He's an obvious start. And I think at this point, Tyler Algier is also an obvious flex. Just be aware if you have him, keep an eye on the usage because he's an obvious flex this week. At some point, he's going to be an obvious bench because at some point, Bijan is going to take over the backfield here. But for now, I think we're going to start them both. Bijan as an RB1, Tyler Algier as probably a solid flex, low-end RB2. You playing them both?
I'm a little cautious with Algier. I really don't want to play him. It's basically matchup dependent where if the Falcons have a lead, they can kind of lead on Algier. We saw that where he had 92% of the carries in the fourth quarter. It was a much different split through quarters 1 through 3. So you can play Algier. Just be careful the fact that he might just be phased out as early as this week or, upcoming weeks. Bijan's that dude, and he's going to see the work. So if you have Algier, just be careful of how you're going to play him. Yeah, so I'll play Algier, but honestly, I'm not too confident in him. And then we can get into the wide receivers and the tight ends and how just
after our second rapper interruption of the day, you opened up your kid. My kid needed a bag of chips apparently, and apparently he wants to put them in a bowl and couldn't do it himself. Gotta love 9-year-olds, but
I like save it a mess.
The wide receivers are scary. There's only one worth noting, and he put up a 0 last week. Yeah, Mark Andrews is practicing again today. That's good news. Okay, but back to this game. Drake London, I had hopes he was a top 15 receiver. We thought there was not enough room for everyone in this lineup. Turns out there's only enough room for Bijan. I think Drake London is even in this is a bad matchup, but I think he's a sit until further notice. He's not someone who I'm dropping yet, but he's that guy where he is firmly glued to my bench for a couple of weeks here until I see that he can be trusted. And if he can't be trusted, he may be on the waiver wire soon.
So if people are London? Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. But if people are dropping London, like that's the guy I'm gonna target for later, just because the talent's too good. And I get it. Like we saw how frustrating that could be.
I'm not dropping him yet. I'm just he's on my radar.
Yeah, it's a guy you just want to watch and see how the usage plays out because that game was just awful for him and both him and Pitts. So it could be like that where those guys are just boom bust depending on matchup. And realistically, he got one target last week. So it's going to improve, but like the Packers defense is going to focus on basically, those two guys. So you have to be careful with them. So, Pitts you have to play just by default just because the tight end position sucks. With London, at least you can bench him and just wait and see until they get better matchups where they're going to be forced to depend on him. But it's realistically, this offense revolves around Bijan. Like he's the one guy you can start each week. The other guys, Pitts, you're going to start just because, how many better tight ends are there? London, just bench him until further notice.
Yeah, Pitts is who we're going to talk next. It's a middle of the pack matchup. Like you said, I would love to treat him like I did for Drake London, but unfortunately, with how shallow it is at tight end, you have no choice. If you drafted him, I'd love to flip him for something, but at this point, what are you even flipping him for? You put up 6.4. You're going to flip him for Kittle or Waller, who are injury prone? They put up about the same. You're not going to get Kelsey. You're not going to get Andrews. What are you going to trade him for Hunter Henry, Hayden Hurst? You put him in and you hope it turns out. It probably won't, but that's the nature of Kyle Pitts.
Yep.
As far as kickers, where the hell is he? We got Koo. It's a middle of the pack matchup. You drafted him. He was probably a top 6 kicker. You're going to play him. And the Falcons DST has literally tied for the worst matchup against the Packers, who looked good last week. Nobody's really playing the Falcons. They were probably one of the last 5 ranked DSTs on my list. So we're not playing the Falcons DST, and I assume we're starting Koo. You're good with all that?
Yep, I'm good with that. I don't know why you would want to just join the misery of playing the Falcons defense, but yeah, just don't touch them.
Addicted to pain, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, you're a masochist, then sure. Go ahead and play them. But outside of that, we're just gonna save.
Love the suffering. Next, we'll move on to the Seattle Seahawks at Detroit. Detroit by 6 with a 47.5 over/under. We will start with the Seahawks, who somehow managed to get me eliminated from my own survivor pool in week 1. I got a little too cute. I had the Commanders, and everyone had the Commanders, and I said, for article's sake, I want to switch to someone else. So let's go with the Seahawks. They're safe. They were not safe. So we have Geno, who looked like he, regressed to his first 10-year form last week. He gets the 7th best matchup. This Lions team looked better last week on defense. They still don't look great. If you've got Geno, I would hope if you have a top 12 quarterback above him, I would hope you have him. Like if you paired him with Richardson, I'd be starting Richardson this week. If you paired him with Tua, I'd be starting Tua. It all depends who you paired him with. He's likely not your only QB, but if he is, you got to start him. Superflex, I'm starting him. I don't know. This scares me. I'd like to see this offense get back on track because if they're going to struggle like last week, this is going to spoil a whole lot of players. What are your thoughts on Geno?
So the interesting thing is the offensive line, and both tackles went out in that game. And we saw it. The second half, they put up 3 yards of offense, legit 3 yards of offense, because they did not make the necessary adjustments. I watched this game in just horror where Geno Smith was just bombarded by pressure at a certain point where the tackles just couldn't hold up. Now, the Lions do have a really good D-line, and this could be a problem, but it's going to be a shootout. Trust me, Geno Smith's good. You want to target him, the wide receivers in this matchup. So, yeah, if you have Geno Smith, you're playing him, unless you have really good other options. Like, you're not going to start him over like a Mahomes or Hurts or anyone like that, but you can play Smith with confidence. It's just they signed a 41-year-old Jason Peters this week to help with the offensive line because those 2 bookend tackles are in trouble. So,
Jesus.
yes, he could be under bombardment, but if they can keep Geno Smith upright, he's going to put up a lot of points this week. So that's just the big caveat with them. But I'm riding with Geno Smith this week. Like, we saw how this game worked out last year where it was just an onslaught of points. I kind of expect it similar just because the defenses are just, kind of a mystery bag. So just start Geno Smith.
My work group chat just sent out a GIF or a picture that made me feel bad for laughing. It was the Gone in 60 Seconds movie poster, except it took out Nick Cage and replaced him with Aaron Rodgers, which is ironic because they kind of look alike. And I'm like, Gone in 60 Seconds, that's terrible, but it's funny. It's only funny because I don't like him, so I don't feel bad for laughing. But we'll move on to the running backs here. All offseason, I was the guy who said Zach Charbonnet didn't matter. This is Ken Walker's team, or his backfield. It looked to be the case. I'm starting him as a running back 2 until it's confirmed that it's his job. Once we get confirmation that it is his job, he should be back up to an RB1. But for now, I'm all in on Walker, and I'm glad Charbonnet was my biggest avoid everywhere. It's a middle-of-the-pack matchup this week against the Lions. I don't expect him to go off, but 10.7 from last week seems like his floor. So, like I said, I'm starting him as an RB2, and I'm benching Charbonnet. What do you got?
Yeah, Walker's an RB2 with RB1 upside in this matchup. Like, there could be a lot of points. And Walker could find his way into multiple touchdowns just because, let's be real, the Lions defense is not much better at this point in time. So, yeah, I'm going to play Walker anywhere I have him. He's going to be I'm targeting. Yeah, Charbonnet just did diddly-poo, basically did nothing in week 1. Yeah, that's kind of just – I was not really too high on Charbonnet. And I know with anybody who saw his player profile, this is kind of a similar vein where they're like, you know what, just don't touch Charbonnet. But, yeah, Walker I'm starting everywhere.
The running backs. The wide receivers are interesting. There's 3 of them. DK was good because of a touchdown. JSN was not great. Tyler Lockett was even more not great. I think I'm probably starting all 3 of them. I'm still not sold on the Lions secondary. It grades out as a middle-of-the-pack matchup, but that's only because some of the other ones, like right now, the Chargers are giving up an average of 78 points to opposing wide receivers. So the data is slightly slanted or skewed by Tyreek Hill putting up 90 points last week. So we'll call it middle of the pack, but I don't think the Lions are even middle of the pack. I think they're less than that. If I have DK, I'm starting him as a high-end 2. Lockett is a 3 or a flex for me. And if I have JSN, I'd like to sit him. But if I got to flex JSN, it's not the worst.
Yeah, I'm going to treat Lockett as a wide receiver 2 this week. JSN is going to be a flex for me. DK, he could find his way into, high-end wide receiver 1 range. So, he'll be a wide receiver 2 with a wide receiver 1 upside. But I'm going to start all 3 of them. JSN's the only one. He's a rookie. Still going to take him some time. But he could just beat the hell out of them in the middle of this week with the zone coverage like they're going to play. So, it could be a boom matchup for JSN. But he's got the higher range of outcomes. But, yeah, Lockett start. DK we're obviously starting, and JSN's probably he's got upside. So yeah, all 3 of them, which means I'm high on Geno, and I am. So yeah, we're just gonna attack that passing offense.
The tight ends theoretically have a top 5 matchup. The problem is they play 9 of them. As far as Jason Myers, the kicker, middle of the pack matchup. I think if you need to, you can start him. It's a dome game. Don't mind that. And the Seahawks DST is probably a sit for me where I can avoid it. I think this Lions team can score some points. So sit the tight ends, play the kicker, sit the DST. Any disagreement there?
100% with you on that.
All right, let's move on to the other side of the ball. We've got the Detroit Lions, who somehow shocked the world in week 1, which can only mean one thing. They're going to shit the bed in week 2. They are a middle-of-the-pack matchup here with the Seahawks. If I got Goff, he's like maybe a step below Geno for me. Excuse me. If I got him in a super flex, I'm starting him as my QB2. If I paired him with someone higher upside like Tua, Richardson, blah, 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 I'm starting them. But he's someone I feel safe starting. Yes. I don't know. You're never going to see probably the 30-point game from him, but you should get 20 to 25 out of him. You good with starting Goff as a mid to high end QB2?
Yeah, like I'll ride with Goff this week in this matchup. The Seahawks defense was atrocious against the freaking Rams, so if that offensive line is going to keep him upright, I would not be surprised to see Goff go 20 plus in this matchup easily.
Yep, it was so bad that their defense is a great matchup here for the Lions' run game. Mm-hmm. Montgomery and Gibbs. I'm torn on this because it looked like Montgomery had the lead back role, but every time Gibbs touched the ball, he looked explosive. I think this is going to be kind of similar to the Algier Bijan.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Start Montgomery, fire him up confidently as a RB2. Gibbs probably also as an RB2. Be wary here for when the usage switches, because at some point Gibbs is going to take over and Montgomery is going to be downsized, in which point Gibbs will likely be an RB1 and Montgomery will be a flex at best. Agree?
100%.
Disagree?
Yeah, completely on board. Like, there will be a point in time, like you're talking about, where it flips. Gibbs is just too freaking talented. Like, you saw him every time he touched the ball, he looked electric. He looked so much better than Montgomery in space. So, I think he led the league in week 1 in broken tackles, and it would not surprise me to see something similar from Gibbs where all he needs is one touch to take to the house. So, yeah, I'll start Gibbs. Montgomery, I'm a little but I'll still start him too. So I'm going to start both running backs in this matchup.
At wide receiver, we have tied for the third best matchup this week. Amon-Ra St. Brown, who I was all in on all offseason. I did some one of those requests for advice things where they, on Fantasy Pros, where you print your stuff up and they give a whole bunch of experts and combine all their bold takes. Mine was that you're too low on Amon-Ra St. Brown, which is ironic because everyone's high on him. But I said, if you're going 1 for 1, I would take Amon-Ra St. Brown over any receiver not named Jefferson or Chase. Give me him over Wilson, Olave, Diggs, Devontae Adams, A.J. Brown, C.D. Lamb. He is my wide receiver 3 right now in Dynasty and Redraft. I think he is absolutely going to go off this week. He is a top 3 for me. He might end up being my start of the week, depending on who else. Jefferson has a crappy matchup. Chase gets Baltimore. Yep, that is going to be St. Brown, likely my wide receiver start of the week. Josh Reynolds is a desperation flex if you need him with Jameson Williams out of the lineup. Khalif Raymond is not useful. What are your thoughts here on mainly St. Brown?
So my bold prediction of the year is St. Brown leads the league in targets and receptions. And we saw how Puka Nacua just shredded the Seahawks defense. And guess what? Amon-Ra is so much better than Puka Nacua. So it could be where he's the overall wide receiver 1 this week. It would not shock me. Like, the Seahawks are going to have a difficult time with him, and he's going to feast.
Do you know what my target projection is for the season for Amon-Ra St. Brown?
150, maybe?
That's cute. That's funny. Higher.
What, 180?
Higher.
Are you saying 200?
192.
Oh, baby.
I think I was I forget what the number is, but I think I'm 7 off of an NFL record. And I was at 202 and reined it in because I didn't want it to be an NFL record. So
yeah, you're like, we're going to. Yeah. It's,
192, that's me reining in my St. Brown. So I'm a little high on St. Brown.
Just a little bit. Yeah. Every week he's a high-end wide receiver 1. I don't care the matchup. Like, I'm playing St. Brown. They literally don't have another wide receiver that's gonna. And we'll talk about Laporta in a second, who I'm pretty confident in. But this offense is ARSB. It's Gibbs. Those are the 2 guys I'm gonna confidently start each week.
And outside of that, I was about to talk about was Laporta. It registers as a the middle of the pack matchup, but it's been tight end heaven over the last few years.
Yes.
I'm starting Laporta as a mid-range, low-end tight end 1, 100% confidence here. I assume you're right on board with it?
Yeah, I loved his usage out the gate against the Chiefs. It's going to continue. The Seahawks suck against against tight ends, and it hasn't really changed for like the past what feels like a decade. Yeah, so we're going to fire up Laporta. If you have him, just play him. I don't even care unless you have like Kelsey or Andrews. Outside of that, like just play him.
Oh, let's see. We have Riley Patterson is ranked as the third best matchup for a kicker, and he's indoors. I don't know if he's rostered in a whole lot of leagues. I feel like he's kind of on your waiver wire. So if you need to stream a kicker, he is not the worst matchup or the worst option. And as far as DST goes, I don't think I want anything to do with the Lions here. It's probably going to be a high-scoring game. I don't think anyone rosters the Lions defense anyways. So if you've got them, there are better streaming options. Agree or disagree with any of that?
I'm with you on that. We're just, it's one where you're like, yeah, you can play him if you want, but honestly, I'm not super confident either way. So
I took down the graphic too early, but you got to sit in a start from that game.
Yeah. So my start of all starts, Albar St. Brown. My sit is gonna be David Montgomery. I'm not super confident. Like I'll play him, but I would just rather fade David Montgomery in this matchup, just because I expect it to be a shootout where Gibbs is gonna be the one that's gonna be heavily involved. So I'm gonna sit David Montgomery. I'm gonna start ASRB. I'm gonna start Gibbs. I'm gonna start Laporta. Those are the three I'm starting.
Yeah, I think pretty much everyone's a start for me in this game. I don't really want to sit anyone. We will move on to 49ers, 8-point favorites against the Rams, who were surprising winners last week, 44.5 total. We have Brock Purdy, who is one of the biggest movers up for me. I guess that would be a riser. We discussed this yesterday. He was a rise. I don't think he's a great quarterback, but he looked better than I thought, and he looked healthier than I thought. This doesn't grade out as a great matchup. I know everyone's been shit-talking me all week for saying the Rams' defense isn't as bad, but I don't think the Rams' defense is as bad as everyone thinks. I don't think they're great, but I don't think they're a matchup to target. So I find that just negligible, but he is for me, he's probably a mid-range QB2 here. I'll play him in super flex. I'm not starting him over even Jared Goff, Geno.
No.
He's probably somewhere in the 15 to 18 for me. What do you think about?
Yeah, that's kind of where I have him. He's like a mid-range QB2 this week. I want to see it again from the Rams defense, and particularly in this matchup where the 49ers offense is just too talented. So, yeah, I'm going to play him, but I'm not super confident on him. So I'll play him. And if you needed a quarterback to stream, you could do worse than him. So, yeah, I'll play him in those matchups.
The running backs, we have Christian McCaffrey here.
Oh, baby.
The Rams defense has been tough to run on. Whether or not that holds true, I don't know. Whether or not it matters, it doesn't. It's Christian McCaffrey. Yep. You're starting him as a top 3 running back.
Every week. Every week. Just ride with McCaffrey. It doesn't matter. He's too good.
He's one of those matchup-proof guys where even if it's a terrible matchup, you are not sitting him. So we'll just move on to a wide receiver room that made me very happy this week. Because all offseason I've been saying Brandon Ayuk is awesome and Deebo Samuel sucks. And in week 1, we learned that Brandon Ayuk is awesome and Deebo Samuel sucks. NFC Offensive Player of the Week was Brandon Ayuk. It's another one where it's probably not rated as the greatest matchup because I think the Rams defense isn't terrible. Who knows if the pass distribution is going to be the same this week as it was last week. That kind of worries me. Is it going to be a hot hand approach where next week it's the Deebo game and then it's the Kittle game? But I am firing up Ayuk as a wide receiver 2, probably the low-end wide receiver 1 potential. As you've seen last week, I think he was what? Do I have that top 12?
I think he was wide receiver 1.
2.
I mean, he's really up there. 1 or 2? Yeah.
Outscored it. Tyreek was 13.5 points ahead. But yeah, so he was wide receiver 2. So I take him as a wide receiver 2. Deebo, I'm probably still starting as a 3. There's nobody else in this offense or this pass game worth talking about. Well, at wide receiver anyway. How do you feel about Luke and Deebo?
Both are wide receiver 2s. Like, I'm playing both of them. I don't trust the Rams to be able to stop either one of these guys. So, like you're saying, it's kind of boom bust depending on matchups. So, like, Ayuk could come down a little bit. Deebo could have a big week. Like, we still had Deebo. So, the target distribution was very similar for the two of them. Like, we saw Deebo kind of at the floor of 11 points. Like, that's kind of where, worst case scenario could be him. And, like, he could pop off where Ayuk had a big week. It's just, you got to start both of those guys. They're too talented.
Tight end, kind of a crappy matchup, theoretically, again, because it's unreliable. George Kittle, if you have him, you drafted him too high. Doesn't matter how bad he was. Doesn't matter the matchup. Doesn't matter the injuries. If you have George Kittle, you're playing him unless you have some kind of bully tight end strategy, in which case you probably still have Kelsey or Andrews, who might not play this week. So if you have Kittle, you don't have the option to pivot. The kicker here, well, I'm trying to find him on my matchup chart. It's Jake Moody. Looked good. Middle of the pack matchup. It's not a hit or miss for me. If you got him, don't bother dropping him. Just start him. I don't lean either way. It's just kind of a neutral for me. The defense, this is the irony of week 1 stats. The Rams are rated as the worst matchup to face for the team. I don't give a damn. I am starting the 49ers. I don't give a shit what they did to the Seahawks in week 1. The Niners, I am playing everywhere. They are likely to be who's Dallas got this week? I'm looking. The Jets. They're going to be my DST 1 this week. I'm pretty sure.
I think they're too freaking good, man.
Start Kittle, doesn't matter on the kicker, must start on the defense.
Yeah, so Kittle's still coming off that injury, so I'm gonna wait another week. So if I'm sitting any one of these skill position players, it's gonna be Kittle just because he's dealing with that injury. But he's too good. You can't bench him.
No,
unless you have, like you're talking about.
You potentially have you got Hunter Henry, Chico Conquo. You playing any of them over him?
You gotta play him. No, you gotta once it gets to Musgrave and Laporta, I'll play Laporta over him and I'll play Musgrave over him. But outside of that, I'm not targeting any one of those guys that are just flex worthy. So I'll play Kittle. He's the top 8 guy for me this week. It's just that injury could have limited him.
Sit 1, start 1. I am going to start Ayuk and sit. I don't know.
I'm sitting Kittle.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kittle of those 3 options I'm going to sit. But CMC is going to be the freaking probably RB1 this week. So it's CMC, it's Ayuk, it's Debo. And when Kittle gets back and healthy, then we can have a discussion about him. But I really just don't want to play Kittle if I don't have to.
All right, we move to the other side of the ball, which the mismatch of the graphics flipping colors here created a weird blur effect in the middle. And I was like, what is that? It's because the graphics flip, I alternate colors each line there to make it more appealing, and it created a real weird vortex in the middle that's kind of tripping me out. But, we start here at QB. Stafford, I thought, looked a lot better than expected. He looked healthy. Yeah. He was the second highest QB rated on the week. This is a terrible matchup. I am not starting him unless I have to. He is a low-end QB2 for me. He was only put up 15 points looking good last week. I'm not playing Stafford unless I have to. Superflex, I would love to pivot to somebody else. I know it's going to be tough for the options, but I'm playing Jordan Love over him. I'm playing Derek Carr. I'm playing Brock Purdy. There's probably some more that I'd rather play over him, but what are you doing with Stafford this week? In a brutal but the theme of my sit start has been, if you play the 49ers, bench everyone against the 49ers.
Yeah, we'll talk about the running backs who I'm fading across the board, who I'm not going to play at all this week.
I'm fading every Ram across the board. That's the irony of how much, I seen leagues where out of $1,000 budget, Puka Nacua went for $750. You can't play Puka Nacua this week.
So it depends. It depends on your team, and if you're dealing with an injury, you're probably going to have to play him. Of those wide receivers, I'll play Puka, but I'm not super confident. I'm benching everybody you're talking about. Higbee's getting benched. The running backs are getting benched. Puka's the only one, and Stafford I'll kind of play. But those 2, just because his usage was absurd. So if he's going to get 10+ targets again, you kind of have to play him. It could be 5 points.
I'm going to breeze through the Rams pretty quick here because I think the same thing can be said for all of them, and we're running long on time. Stafford, you probably got to sit unless you have to. I know everyone loaded up on Kyron Williams. I got a few of them.
Fade him.
You got to sit him.
You're not playing those
running backs. Even if it wasn't the Niners. The wide receivers are unplayable. Puka Nacua, you can flex if you have to. Tyler Higbee, if you have to. I'd like to see, one sec, what's the matchup here for tight ends? It is so they weren't as bad. Tight end was the one thing over the last few years that they have been slightly vulnerable to. So if you have Higbee, I don't mind playing Higbee. He is not my top choice, but you got to do what you got to do. For kicker, we have kicker is the second worst matchup, so you're going to sit Mar. And for the
Yeah.
DST, I am not touching it because it's the 49ers. So pretty
No,
much
no thanks.
the moral of the story is this week against the Niners, pretty much sit everyone on the Rams. Is there anything there that you disagree with or that you'd like to
No.
add?
You can play Higbee if you have to. Like Higbee and Puka are the two guys of that offense I'll play if I have to. But outside of that, it's like I don't want to play any of the skill position players. Like you probably have better options on your bench who probably had worse weeks in week one, but you could play over those guys.
Yeah, I agree. It's one of those, like I said, the 49ers are just a must avoid for me pretty much across the board except for maybe tight end.
They're a nightmare, man.
All the more reason why that money spent on Puka Nacua is a real shame for the people who are desperate to need him this week. We'll move on. We've got the Giants favored by 5.5 against the Cardinals. It's amazing that a team can lose by 40 and still be 5.5 points on the road the next week. Tells you how bad the Cardinals are because if the Giants hadn't been blown out by the Cowboys, they'd probably be 15-point favorites. Yeah. Having said that, they made a tougher day for the Commanders than I expected. We have, where the hell is Daniel Jones? Oh, there he is. Daniel Jones was not great last week. It's the 12th ranked matchup for quarterbacks. He's in the Jared Goff range. If you got him in a 2 QB league, you're probably going to play him. Arizona's defense looked better than I expected, but I don't think the matchup helps or hurts him. You got to play him in a QB2 league. You probably in for 1 QB league have better options, so I don't think you need to play him. What are you thinking about Daniel Jones here?
I'll play him over the Staffords and the Loves of the world this week, but like I really don't want to play him. So it depends on who you have, but he's like that mid-range QB2 where you can play, and the matchup is a lot better than it was last week. So have a little confidence with him, and his rushing gives him a little bit higher upside. Like his 6.6 points that he got last week is probably the lowest he'll have all year. But it's the Cardinals. They're just not that good. So you can play him.
The running back position's pretty easy. It's not a great matchup, but it's Saquon Barkley. If you have Saquon Barkley, you're starting him as a probably, I think, mid to low end running back one this week in a not great matchup. No disagreement?
No, yeah, like he's going to put up points. It's just last week was such a disaster. People are probably a little worried about him, but let's be real. Where you drafted Saquon, you have to play him. You don't have better options on your bench where you could be like, I'm going to bench him. No, like you're playing Saquon. He's going to get the volume, the usage. It should be a lot better week for him against the Cardinals.
The pass catchers, the wide receivers anyways, it's not a great matchup. It's not a terrible matchup, but there's 19 of them, so you can't trust any of them. My favorite, if I had to, I flexed Darius Slate in a few spots because I think he's the safest, but there's no ceiling here. The guys who are safe have no ceiling on the team, and the guys who have upside have no floor. So, like, you could play a Jalen Hyatt, something like that, but I don't want anything to do with any of these wide receivers. I assume you are, in the same boat.
Yeah, no thing. Like, if it depends on Waller and his whole situation with injury, which he's still dealing with. But like outside of Waller, I really don't want to play any one of these guys. So I'd have to be in like a 32-team league or a 24-team league where I'm contemplating playing one of these guys as my flex. But realistically, just don't play them. Like you're just asking for trouble if you're playing them.
Darren Waller, crappy opening week, decent matchup. He's another one where if you got him, you're playing him. I get it. He looked like crap last week. The Cardinals have been a wonderful matchup for tight ends over the last few years. You're playing him. Expect him to rebound. He should be probably a top 5 tight end this week. You would hope. The kicker situation here, middle of the pack matchup. I believe Arizona's a dome, are they not? Or is it a retractable roof?
It's like, I think it's retractable. It's definitely open air from what I remember. I could look it up.
Either way, it doesn't matter. Either way, it's a decent matchup. I think it should be decent conditions. If you have Graham Gano, you can play him here. Not worth sitting, not worth dropping. The Giants defense I have right now as DST9. I think if you got him, you play him this week.
Yep.
Hope for some turnovers. The Cardinals couldn't move the ball very well last week, so I think they're a pretty easy start as a top 12 defense. Any objections?
Nope, play them. Just play them. The Cardinals suck, so you just play them.
They do suck. Moving on to that Cardinals team that is so wonderful. Let's go. We'll start with, look how far down the quarterback is in the scoring. That's brutal. Nice. We have Josh Dobbs. You would think they just move over to Clayton Tune, but bad matchup, bad quarterback. you are probably not playing the Cardinals. If you're playing a Cardinals quarterback, you've done something horribly, horribly wrong or lost a bet. So we don't even need to talk about him. I'll just skip him. At running back, we have James Conner. Damn it, James Conner. Where do you see Conner? You see him as a mid-range, low-end RB2. The matchup is, I'm trying to find it. The matchup is 10th best, but I don't know if I want to play him because this offense can't move the ball.
No, he needs an end zone for like the true upside case, but he's like a floor play RB2 where he's going to see volume. He's going to see some pass attempts and catches. It's kind of ugly. So you don't want to watch the game, but then you look and he's got 12 to 15 points for you and he was serviceable. So that's kind of where I'll treat him as like a low range volume play RB2.
At wide receiver, it's interesting. Hollywood Brown gets a bad matchup against the Giants secondary. I seen Hollywood Brown hit at least 3 waiver wires today, which was interesting. He didn't have a bad week. It says 8.7 here, but one of the leagues I was in was full PPR, and he put up like 12 points. And the player they dropped, I put in a claim on him because the player he was dropped for was clearly inferior. I don't even remember who it was, but it might have been Van Jefferson. But regardless, Hollywood Brown in a not great matchup. Wide receiver 3 flex.
Yeah, at best, like that kind of case. Like if you have to play him, sure, but you got Josh Dobbs as quarterback. It's not the DeAndre Hopkins quarterback of years ago where like he's just going to be good because of it. It could be a disaster where he puts up 4 points. If he didn't have that carry last week, he's talking about like 4 points. So you have to be careful with him, but he's going to be the leader in receptions and targets. It's ugly week in and week out. Like I don't have much confidence in him. So yeah, like a wide receiver 3-4 type where it's just like, yeah, play him, get a few points, but I don't really want to if I have other options.
We move on to the week 1 leader in tight end targets, Zach Ertz. It's not a great matchup, whether it be Ertz or Trey McBride. I don't think I'm playing either. Excuse me. If you're in desperate straits here, I suppose Zach Ertz is playable. I'm expecting, I think 8 points is probably his ceiling. I don't want to play him, but I will if I have to. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, he saw 10 targets in week 1. So any tight end who's going to see, and he's coming off the ACL with the old man, it doesn't matter. They're really low A-dot targets. So it's going to be 10 targets, 30 yards, like 6 catches type stuff a lot for him. So you can do worse than him, but the upside just isn't there unless he falls into the end zone. So yeah, he's a low-end tight end 1 floor play. It's ugly. Like that whole offense is kind of the same thing, just ugly across the board. So you can play him, but there's probably a better option than Ertz.
Matt Prater, borderline top 12 this week. Decent matchup, decent conditions. If you got him, play him. If you need one, pick him up. The DST is ranked as the best matchup this week against the Giants. That is skewed data because of week 1 and the Cowboys. I'm not going to trust it. If I have the Cardinals, I don't hate playing them as a desperation play here. They are certainly someone I'd be pivoting away from. I don't think I have the Cardinals in general, but they're probably a team where you could drop them to stream someone else. They're not really worth holding on to. Agree?
Yeah, it's just ugly in Arizona, and even the defense. They did surprisingly really well in week 1, so we'll see if that translates to week 2 against a better team than Washington. So yeah, Daniel Jones could light them up where he rushes for a ton, passes for a decent amount, and it's just ugly across the board.
The next game we have is the Jets at Cowboys. Cowboys 9.5-point favorites in a 39.5 over/under. I am all over the low side of this game here. Everyone is all over the Cowboys who just pummeled the Giants. I get it. Zach Wilson's the quarterback. This defense is really fucking good. I don't know if they give up 9.5 points, let alone lose by 9.5. And I get it. That sounds crazy, but I like the Jets here in my survivor pool as an upset pick. We start with quarterback. Dallas is a terrible match for a quarterback. Zach Wilson's a terrible quarterback for a quarterback. Leave him on your bench in the deepest of leagues. Some of the fab bids I seen on him, like you said in Scott Fishbowl, were asinine. Him going for 75% of your fab budget. There's no way you can start Zach Wilson here.
So in Scott Fishbowl, what's nice is they take away all the negatives. So you can play someone like him, and he'll put a decent amount of points just because there's no negative case for tight end or quarterbacks. So yeah, like that case you can play out. But outside of Scott Fishbowl, it's just ugly. I don't like really anyone in this matchup. Like both defenses are two of the top 5 defenses in the league. Like you're saying 39 over under. So it's just rough. And it's outside of Brees and like Garrett Wilson, it's ugly. Like I hate it because who's going to score a lot of points in this week? I'm not seeing the case for really anybody.
So the Cowboys are a bottom 7 matchup for running backs. Brees looked better than I expected, worse than he did last year. If you've got Brees, I could probably fire him up as an RB2. I'm not starting Dalvin Cook. I'm not starting any other running backs. You?
No, I'll fire Brees up just because the talent is too good, and he showed off the burst, which we wanted to see. So yeah, he's going to be the guy moving forward in this offense. So it's Brees Hall. I don't want to play Dalvin Cook though, like you were talking about.
Second worst matchup for wide receivers. Garrett Wilson's too good. I don't care who the quarterback is. You got to play him and just hope he finds a way. You can't sit him. But
he's a wide receiver too. Wide receiver 3.
Yeah, it's not looking great. Tight end, it's a decent matchup. Tyler Conklin, I don't know how you can trust him. There's got to be better options out there on your tight end waiver wire. Kicker, we have the worst matchup for Greg Zuerlein, so I would be benching him, even though it is an indoor game. And we have the DST I am not touching, which is scary because I love the Jets, and it puts me in a rough spot because I don't think the Jets are a defense I want to drop. I don't want to play them. This is a rare scenario where if you can stream a second defense and hold a second defense, I would stream one. If not, I think you just got to roll with the Jets and take your lumps and hope that they get them a couple of Dak interceptions or pick 6 or something like that to balance out the points the Cowboys are going to put up. But I like the Jets. I just don't know if I like this matchup. But you can't drop the Jets. I think they're going to be a top 5 defense the rest of the season.
Yeah, it's one of those weird things where if teams drafted a second tight end or a second quarterback or one of those like bench running backs, you can drop them, hold the Jets, pick up a defense to stream, and then week 3 you go back to the Jets. But yeah, the Cowboys could literally just make this game a blowout, and it just could get really ugly because the Jets can't do anything on offense, like with freaking Zach Wilson. So that's the problem for them. So they could get behind and they're chasing, and it just becomes an ugly situation. So yeah, I like what you're talking about. Just bench the defense this week if you have a better option. If you want to ride it, like it's a 39 over under, so it's probably not going to be a high scoring game. So you could go with them, and it could just be an ugly game overall.
Start Brees Hall, pray for Garrett Wilson, bench everyone else.
Yeah. Yep, just across the board, just don't play them.
The other side of the board, we have Dak Prescott, who didn't have to do much in week 1. I don't like this matchup at all.
Same thing. Yep.
If you have Dak, he falls into the mid-range QB2 talk here. If you've got him, if you handcuffed him with a Tua or Richardson, play them. If he's your QB1, you play him. You play him in 2 QB leagues. You just kind of hope that he limits the turnovers and that they can score some points, but you can't sit Dak.
No, he's like that mid-range QB2 for me this week. So there's all that cutoff of like I'd rather play Geno, I'd rather play those type of guys over him. But the matchup sucks for both teams across the board, like we're kind of talking about. So you can probably bench Dak if you have a better option, but you're just kind of stuck with him realistically.
Tony Pollard was the RB4 on the week. It's a tough matchup. I'm still playing him. I think he's a low-end RB1 this week because I think it's a tough matchup. You still got to play him. I'm not playing any of the other running backs, Rico Dowdle or whoever the hell they have, Deuce Vaughn, or there's somebody I'm forgetting, but it doesn't matter. So you play Pollard, you sit everyone else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. He's too good, and they love him. So yeah, you just got to ride with him week in and week out from this point on.
Wide receiver scares me. CeeDee Lamb, I think, is a must start, but it worries me because I don't think anybody else on this, any of these other receivers are a must start, and that worries me that the very talented secondary of the Jets may just shut down CeeDee Lamb. I think you're going to start him. You have to start him as a wide receiver 1. I think it could be a rough week.
Yeah, the defense is going to funnel on stopping Tony Pollard and CeeDee Lamb. So, like, this is the thing with CeeDee Lamb. He's too good. You can't bench him, but it could be a low game where he gets 7 targets, 5 receptions for 55 yards, no touchdowns, like that type of game. It doesn't really do anything for you, but he'll be a floor play this week, kind of similar to last week where he put up 12 points. So, yeah, he's a wide receiver 2 floor for you. I don't see much upside for him in this matchup, but he's good enough where it might not even matter. He just blows it out anyways.
It's a good matchup for tight end, so I don't mind Jake Ferguson, who might be the unguarded man. If you have him, I don't mind him as a low-end tight end 1, more likely a high-end tight end 2, but if I have him, I'd play him unless you have better options. Kicker, we have Brandon Aubrey. He is worth a start. Pretty good matchup, indoor conditions. I'd start him. And the DST, I think Dallas is one of 3 must starts. The Jets are underrated. Their offense sucks. Dallas, I'm never sitting. I'm firing them up easily this week. So start Ferguson, probably start the kicker, easy top 3, start the DST here. Agree or disagree?
Yeah, start Ferguson. He still saw 7 targets in a blowout, so that's the worry. If it's a blowout, they might take him off the field. But if it's a close game, he's going to be involved a lot and see a decent amount of targets. So you want to play him.
I assume you're starting the DST here too?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, the defense is too good. Like, you start both defenses in this matchup, you ride them and just see how it goes. It's just, you can't fade them.
See, that's professional there. I asked you a question I knew the answer to just to buy time while I loaded up the graphic. And it seemed like I was just listening to your take, but we already knew that. So we can now fire up the next game, our final game of the day. Ooh, we're going real long here. So we'll have to wrap this up. We got the Saints 3-point favorites at the Panthers, 40.5 total. Derek Carr gets a pretty bad matchup. I think the Panthers secondary is underrated. He's a low-end QB2 for me, but in Superflex, you probably got to start him. Agree?
Yeah. The one thing for them is the Panthers, I can't remember. Somebody's injured on the back end for the Panthers, so it could be an even better matchup than it was last week. But, yeah, you play Derek Carr this week. He's a, mid-range QB2, and he has upside for higher in this matchup. So, yeah, I'm okay with him there.
The running back, I think Kendra Miller's still out. Alvin Kamara is obviously out. Jamal Williams really disappointed me last week. This registers as the top matchup for a running back. I'm not playing him unless I have a desperation flex. I'm leaving Jamal Williams on the bench. I think he's a touchdown-dependent starter here. But like I said, unless I have a desperation flex, I'm leaving him on the bench. I want nothing to do with it.
So I'm going to actually play him in this matchup. I think it's a really good matchup for Jamal Williams. Like, I expect him to find
the best matchup of the week.
Yeah. So like, I'm playing him unless I have really good running backs or really good wide receivers. Like, I would need like really good options across the board to bench him. Is the way I look at it. He's gonna be a top 24 running back for me, and he has higher upside. So yeah, I'll play him in this matchup.
It is the worst. It goes from the best running back matchup to the worst wide receiver matchup. I don't give a damn. I'm starting Chris Olave as probably a low-end wide receiver 1. Michael Thomas, I will fire up as a 2 or a 3, and I will even flex Rashid Shaheed or possibly make him a 3. I think there's 3 startable Saints wide receivers. Michael Thomas always, contingent on health, but I'd fire all 3 of them up. What do you think of the 3? Obviously,
yeah,
I have Olave, Shaheed, Thomas. You?
Yeah, Olave, Thomas, Shaheed is how I have them, but Olave's a stud. You have to play him. Thomas, I'm playing. Shaheed, I'd even flex if I was desperate. So yeah, I'll ride with all 3 of these guys depending on the matchup.
All right, tight end. It's a not great matchup. Juwan Johnson is unexciting. He's just kind of there. I think he's probably a high-end 2, maybe a low-end 1 as the upside. But if you got him, you can probably play him. He's not so bad that I would drop him to pick someone else up, but he's unexciting, and tight end sucks. So what are your thoughts on Juwan Johnson?
100%. I don't really want to play him, but I'll play him if I have to. But there's probably better options you can play this week than Juwan Johnson.
The kicker, whose name I can't even pronounce, Grupp, however the hell his name is. He's got a bad matchup. Not all that sold on him. I think he's a sit for me. And the DST, I think this one's going to be low scoring. Both offenses kind of suck. I think the Saints got some turnovers, coming for sure. It's ranked as the 7th best matchup, but I think it's even better than that. I think the Saints defense is the strength of their team. As we seen last week, they are going to grind out 17-16 wins. I'm firing up the Saints as a top 6 this week. You playing the Saints D?
Yeah, I like the matchup for the Saints defense. It could be good. I think they have a high floor in this matchup with the potential to be just a boom for you. So you can fire them up and roll with them. It's just, they're playing a rookie quarterback who is likely going to struggle again. So expect some turnovers where they generate that, and it's just, it kind of just piles on where the game gets worse and worse for the Panthers.
You got to sit and start for this game? Sit all the receivers, or start all the receivers, sit.
So I'm going to, of the matchups, I'll bench Derek Carr I'm gonna roll with Jamal Williams. He'll be my start, but like I'm auto starting Chris Olave, so I'm not even keeping him in the discussion.
Yeah.
So like I'll bench the quarterback. I'll roll with the running back in this matchup. Chris Olave is his own separate tier. He's auto playing, so it doesn't matter.
Bryce Young, second worst matchup. I am not touching him. This Saints defense is good. He looked bad. I think he's a QB3 for me. He's not even inside my top 24. There are very few quarterbacks I'm not playing over him this week. What are your thoughts on Bryce?
The only formats I'm playing Bryce in is the Scott Fish Bowl, where negatives don't hurt me. So I'll play him in that matchup if I have to. But outside of that, like you have a much better option on the waiver wire or whatever. In Dynasty, just bench him if you can. Let him sit on your bench. Let him develop. But this is not the game you want to play Bryce Young in. It could get really on you where you'd be hoping you get 11 points from this week. Like it could be a lot worse.
The rushing game has typically been something the Saints shut down. If you got Miles Sanders, you probably have to play him as a 2. Not starting Hubbard. Sanders, what are your thoughts on him? You got to play him?
Yeah, I mean, if you have Sanders on your roster, you likely have to play him. If you have a decent up roster, just bench him. He's a floor play for me this week. I don't see much upside with him. And we saw how Chuba was involved. If he's continually cutting into that work, like Sanders could be one of those dead zone running backs who just doesn't pay off, which unfortunately a lot of those guys look like they're not going to pay off this year, which surprising that happens every year. But we talk ourselves into it like, oh, yeah, this is the year running back depth hits. But I don't like Sanders in the matchup either. So if you have a better option, play the Motor Sanders. He's the RB3 for me this week, and I'm just not really looking forward to playing him, honestly.
Sorry, I dropped my pen and it annoyed the hell out of me. Wide receivers, it's a bad matchup. Thielen looks hurt. Mingo's not that great. Chenault, Marshall, I think I am dropping all 4 of these. And it's funny because in all the leagues where I did make a waiver claim, Thielen was probably dropped in 50% of them as the guy that I got rid of to make room for Kyron Williams, Puka Nacua, Rashid Shaheed. Yep. I think all 4 receivers here are droppable. So I wouldn't even consider playing them. Like I said, they're droppable, let alone playable.
No, I saw Thielen get dumped in dynasty leagues after week 1. So yeah, I mean you could target like Mingo or Terrace Marshall if you want because there's some promising upside with those guys. But realistically, just leave them. Just don't start them. Just let them sit on the bench if you have them, and do not play any of them.
Hayden Hurst was the tight end 2 on week 1. This is by far the worst matchup for a tight end. I am not playing him at all. The Saints gave up exactly 0 points last week to tight ends. And they are the reason Chigo Conklo looked like shit. So I'm not touching Hayden Hurst. There's got to be better streamer options out there. I'm not touching him. How about you?
His usage at least interests me, but I'm not playing him. If I have him on a roster and I'm desperate to play him, sure, I'll play him. But like you're saying, there's better options. He's a tight end too, and I don't see much upside for him. But season long, I like Hayden Hurst in this offense just because they have no wide receivers. So Hayden Hurst is kind of the de facto wide receiver 1 in this offense. But yeah, there's better options for you this week.
Indoor game, low scoring game that probably will turn into another field goal fest. Eddie Pinheiro gets the number 1 ranked kicker matchup. I am firing him up if you need a streamer. I like that one for sure. The DST here, I don't know what to make of the Panthers. They are ranked. It's a middle-of-the-pack matchup for the Saints. I think they could get some turnovers. I don't think it's going to be high scoring. I think they're a safe play, but not exciting. I don't know. I think you can start them if you have them, but they're not someone I'm targeting. They're just kind of a middle-of-the-pack DST 12 to 15 for me. So I don't mind them, but I don't love them. You?
Yeah, if you have them, you can play them. But yeah, like you're saying, I don't see much upside for them. Maybe they fall their way into some turnovers or, defense touchdown, something like that. But that seems like kind of lucky chance. Overall, I'm just, kind of on them this week.
And that concludes our NFC home game preview. Who would have thought with just 2 of us we would have talked so fucking long? But here we are an hour and a half in. Good God. We need more people in the show just to keep us from talking. So.
I guess so.
All right. Well, join us again tomorrow where we will be previewing all the AFC home games, including the Monday Nighters. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. This is Aaron St. Dennis, the FF Mad Scientist, and that's Jesse Moeller. And for everyone at Rat Pack Fantasy Football, thank you for watching. Take care and have a great day.
All right. Take care, folks.